Welcome to Twisted Truths, where betrayal meets brutal payback, and where the most unexpected twists expose what people are really capable of. This story isn't just shocking, it's personal. My name is Matt Foster. I'm 36 now, but 10 years ago, I walked into a half-empty room with nothing but a refurbished laptop and a head full of ideas. Back then, Cinercom was just a name scribbled on a whiteboard, a startup running off caffeine and fumes in a dusty corner of Oakland. I was their first engineer. The first one to believe. And I built the engine that powered everything they are today, an operational back-end system so efficient, it cut their burn rate in half and became the blueprint for every product they scaled after. I didn't just write code, I built the veins that carried the lifeblood of the company. And back then, Roger, our CEO, saw that. Matt is Cinercom's pulse, he told journalists. He's the architect of our future. But admiration has a shelf life in Silicon Valley. Somewhere along the way, the gratitude vanished. I wasn't the golden boy anymore. I was just legacy. Old news. Roger stopped inviting me to pitch meetings. New hires didn't know my name. My updates were waved off in boardrooms. Let's not dwell on maintenance, Roger once said in front of the entire leadership team. We need ideas that push boundaries now. I blinked. Maintenance? He was talking about the system I built, the same one still propping up the company. It hurt more than I let on. Because I'd watched this place grow from a few desks and empty ramen cups into a billion-dollar colossus. I wasn't just an employee. I was part of its DNA. But the final blow? That came at the year-end party. I should have known something was off when my invitation arrived late and without a +1. Still, I showed up in a crisp charcoal suit, freshly cut hair, and the kind of quiet pride only 10 years of unseen labor could give a man. The banquet was held at a 5-star hotel downtown. Glass chandeliers, champagne pyramids, red carpets, the works. But when I checked the seating chart, my heart sank. Table 42. It was shoved into a corner by the kitchen doors. Literally next to a trash station where servers dumped scraps between courses. My name was scribbled there, right alongside a few janitors and security guards, good people, sure, but clearly not meant to be symbolic peers for the guy who wrote the foundation of the company's system. I stood there for a second, frozen. This wasn't a mistake. It was deliberate. Everyone else, new developers, interns, even Roger's fresh-faced golden boy, Darren, sat closer to the stage. Lit by warm spotlight, surrounded by execs and product heads, laughing over Wagyu sliders and lobster bisque. I was sequestered. Isolated. Forgotten. And no one said a word about it. Not the project managers I helped train. Not the engineers I mentored. Not even Roger, who looked right through me when he made his grand entrance. I sat down anyway, pretending not to notice the sting in my chest. When the speeches began, I waited. Waited for my name. Waited for some shred of recognition. Roger toasted the visionaries who carried us into the future. He called Darren a generational mind, and even praised a junior UI designer for a feature she barely touched. But me? Nothing. 10 years. Vanished. A ghost among his own bricks. That night, I didn't sleep. I stared at my ceiling, mind spinning, heart burning. I'd given my youth to Cinercom. Sacrificed birthdays, relationships, weekends, and health. For what? To be tucked away by the trash, like something that no longer served a purpose. But that's when it started. Not the breakdown. The plan. I didn't hand in my resignation the next day. No. That would have been too easy, for them. I went to work as usual. Smiled like usual. Typed like usual. But something inside me had changed. It's hard to describe what it feels like when a place you've given everything to shows you just how replaceable you are. It isn't just rejection, it's annihilation. You begin to question your value, not just professionally but personally. If I meant nothing here, did I ever matter at all? Every morning, I'd wake up and stare into the mirror, looking for signs of the man I used to be, the dreamer, the builder, the believer. All I saw was a ghost in a company-branded hoodie. The worst part wasn't the cold shoulder from Roger or being ignored in meetings. No, the worst part was how everyone around me started to mirror his behavior. Colleagues I'd mentored now avoided eye contact. Junior engineers who used to ask for advice now ran to Darren. Darren. The kid was 28, brilliant on paper, full of buzzwords and boldness, but he didn't understand the system's architecture beneath his feet. He just knew how to talk over people, and Roger loved him for it. He became the new face of innovation. He got the best projects, the media mentions, and even Roger's old pep talks, ones that used to be mine. I watched them feed him the spotlight while I was told to just monitor things in the background. I was the background. One night, I stayed late in the office, habit, mostly. Everyone else was gone. I walked past Darren's desk and glanced at his screen. He'd left his Slack open. There it was, a private chat with Roger. Roger, has Matt been cooperative? Darren, yeah, he's still clinging to the system like it's a monument. He won't get in the way. Roger, good. We need that legacy code phased out. Quietly. Can't risk him making noise. My stomach dropped. They weren't just sidelining me. They were planning to erase everything I had built. Everything. I stumbled out of the office and drove home in silence, the city lights flickering past like ghosts. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I sat in the dark and stared at the wall for hours. Then I pulled up the old system logs. My system. I knew every byte, every thread, every edge case. Not because I documented it, but because I lived it. If they wanted to cut me out, fine. But they would have to do it without the blueprint. Without the experience. Without the patches I applied in silence every time their vision pushed the system too far. They had no idea how delicate it really was, how many fires I prevented before they could even spark. I could have taken the whole thing down in a few keystrokes. But I wasn't there for revenge. Not yet. What I needed first was clarity. And a plan. So I sat in front of the mirror again the next morning. And this time, I saw him. The old Matt. The one who didn't build systems to be thanked. He built them because he could. For the next 2 weeks, I operated on 2 levels. On the surface, I was the same old Matt, quiet, dependable, invisible. But beneath that, I was hunting. Not for weakness. For truth. You see, I didn't want petty revenge. That would have been easy. Sabotage. Too obvious. Legal threats. Too slow. I wasn't interested in damage, I was interested in exposing the rot. Cinecom wasn't failing because it was growing too fast. It was failing because its leadership had started believing their own press releases. Roger especially. While he was on panels and podcasts bragging about our system's robust architecture, I was knee-deep in logs and stress test simulations. And that's when I saw it. A flaw. Not a small one. A ticking time bomb. Darren and his new dev team had patched a high-traffic API endpoint without understanding how it interacted with our legacy data cache. To the untrained eye, it looked like an optimization. But to me, it was a guaranteed cascade failure just waiting for scale. Every time traffic surged above 62%, the system would begin to loop unstable requests, slowly overloading memory. Failover protocols were disabled to save resources. If left untouched, a major client spike could freeze the entire platform for hours. And guess what? Our biggest international client was about to launch a promotional campaign in 6 days. A campaign projected to drive over 80% traffic load. That wasn't just a spike. That was impact detonation. I stared at the simulation results, my hands trembling. Here it was. The moment that would define everything. If I said nothing, Synercom's system would crash in front of their largest client. They'd panic. Scramble. Try to revive the code Darren had mangled. Roger would be humiliated. But the fallout would hit the whole company, employees I respected, contracts we'd fought for, customers who trusted our tech. I couldn't do that. But I wasn't going to save them for free. So I printed the logs, archived my simulation runs, and wrote an encrypted technical report. Then I emailed a redacted version to one person I knew still had integrity. Elena Tran, our former chief operations officer. Elena had left the company a year earlier, fed up with Roger's arrogance. But we had worked together closely, and she always respected what I built. She now worked as a senior consultant for a major competitor. My subject line was simple. Subject: Synercom's codebase has a fatal flaw. You need to see this. She responded in 32 minutes. Matt, are you still there? Please tell me you are. This is serious. You need to talk to my CTO. Within hours, I was in a secure video call with Elena and her new leadership team. I walked them through the flaw. I didn't badmouth Roger or Darren, I just laid out the facts. The code. The traffic data. The projections. Their CTO leaned back, visibly shaken. If this hits production during that campaign, they'll bleed clients. Possibly lawsuits. Elena leaned in. Matt, do you want a job? I paused. No, I said. I want a platform. I want a team. I want the chance to build something better, with people who won't treat me like an afterthought. She nodded slowly. Done. They didn't even blink at my terms. I was offered a role as principal architect with full autonomy and a budget. But I had one more request. When the fallout hits, I want to be visible. Not as the guy who left Synercom. As the guy who warned them, and built something better. Elena didn't hesitate. Then that's exactly what you'll be. I leaned back in my chair that night, watching the San Francisco skyline flicker in the window of my apartment. For the first time in years, I didn't feel betrayed or forgotten. I felt dangerous. And I hadn't even started. I submitted my resignation on a Monday morning. No meeting. No dramatic farewell speech. Just a simple email, 2 lines long. Effective immediately. Thank you for the opportunities. Matt Foster. And just like that, I was gone. Roger didn't respond. Darren didn't ask why. To them, my silence was a win. I could almost hear Roger chuckling to the board. He finally realized it was time to move on. But what they didn't know, what they couldn't know, was that I wasn't retreating. I was reloading. Elena's company, Cornova, moved quickly. They onboarded me in 48 hours. And the moment I walked into their high-rise in downtown Palo Alto, I knew this was different. I wasn't a ghost here. I was a weapon. And they wanted to aim me straight at Synercom. The CTO, Ravi, didn't waste time. We're going after your old territory. We want the enterprise accounts, data analytics, cloud ops, middleware. You know where they're weak. He slid a folder toward me. It was a list of Synercom's top 10 clients. I looked it over, heart pounding. These were contracts I had helped secure. Infrastructure I had helped build. Relationships I had personally nurtured for years while Roger soaked in the spotlight. Now. They were vulnerable. Especially with that API flaw sitting like a grenade under their production servers. But I didn't rush. That wasn't the point. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be theatrical. It would be surgical. So I spent the next 2 weeks building a team. Not just any team, the team. I reached out to engineers Synercom had pushed out. Veterans who, like me, had been tossed aside for younger, cheaper talent. Some were hesitant at first. Bitter. Wounded. But I spoke to them plainly. We built something once. And they used it without giving us our due. I'm asking you to build again. But this time, we own it. 5 of them said yes within days. Lisa, my old database analyst. Marcus, who wrote the first security layer. Jean, who handled UI logic. Even Raoul, a sysadmin with unmatched intuition for performance tuning. We called ourselves the Foundry team, because we weren't rebuilding Synercom's system. We were forging something new. Better. And we weren't just poaching clients. We were offering stability, transparency, and respect. We made sure every ex-Synercom client we contacted received a technical brief about the potential failures in the legacy code. We didn't name names, we just let the logs and projections speak for themselves. Then we offered them a demo of our prototype, a new system, designed from the ground up, with modern architecture and clean integrations. Scalable, secure, adaptable. One by one, those clients responded. First with questions. Then with meetings. Then with contracts. By the end of month 1, we had converted 3 major enterprise clients, worth over $38 million annually, from Synercom to Cornova. Roger hadn't noticed yet. But he would. Because I knew when the system flaw would hit. I had the campaign calendar memorized. It was scheduled for Friday at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. The biggest client Synercom had, Veltrax Global, was about to launch a worldwide live analytics dashboard during their trade summit in Singapore. A peak traffic event. Roger would be on stage. Darren would be monitoring the load. And I would be watching it unfold. With a press kit ready. Friday. 10:45 a.m. Pacific. I was in a conference room at Cornova's HQ, sipping black coffee and staring at a live monitor of Synercom's public traffic logs, data publicly exposed for performance bragging, ironically. They always loved showing off during client campaigns. On the screen, numbers ticked upward. 61%. 62.4%. 65.1%. I leaned forward. The grenade was rolling into place. At 11 a.m. sharp, Veltrax's keynote kicked off in Singapore, broadcast live to an audience of nearly 100,000 viewers. Their dashboard, built entirely on Synercom's system, was supposed to update in real time with global data streams from their logistics operations. Only. It didn't. I watched the error logs start flooding in, line after line. Error, memory overflow at node 4C0. Error, API timeout, cache miss/unresolved loop. Critical, failover protocol not found. Then the traffic graph flatlined. For 16 minutes, the live analytics platform stayed frozen. An entire international summit watched spinning wheels and broken metrics. Veltrax executives scrambled backstage. The live feed cut to a promotional video. Roger was nowhere to be seen. And Darren? I later heard he stood in the server room shaking, staring at his own hands. Because they had no idea what had gone wrong. They had no idea how to fix it. Because the one person who could had already walked out their door. By noon, Twitter was ablaze. Tech blogs were posting articles titled, Synercom's Big Blunder, Live Data Failure at Global Summit. Did Synercom ignore a known flaw? Clients reconsider vendor after critical outage. I didn't cheer. I didn't smile. But I did send an email. Just one. To Roger's public work address. Subject, always check the foundation. You built your castle on my code and fired the architect. Now you see what happens when the walls shift. No reply. Of course. By 2 p.m., my phone rang. It was Veltrax's CTO. Matt. We want to talk. Not just about migrating to Cornova, but about you leading the rebuild. A few hours later, 2 more clients reached out. Roger's empire wasn't just cracking. It was collapsing. And the best part? I never touched a line of Synercom's code. I didn't hack. I didn't sabotage. I didn't leak. I simply left. And let the weight of their own arrogance do the rest. That night, Cornova's PR team released a prepared statement. We are pleased to welcome several new enterprise clients who value security, transparency, and experienced engineering leadership. We do not comment on other companies' internal decisions, but we do believe that talent should never be underestimated, or discarded. It didn't name Synercom. It didn't need to. Everyone knew. The next day, an internal email from Roger leaked. It was a panic-fueled memo blaming Darren, the dev team, and even poor legacy documentation. I read it twice and laughed. Documentation? The system was never broken. They just broke it when they stopped listening. 2 weeks after Synercom's crash, Cornova was flooded with resumes, from engineers, analysts, and even managers looking to jump ship. Most of them came from Synercom. But one file hit my inbox directly. No HR filter. No LinkedIn ping. Just a cold, direct email. From Coleman@synercomcorp.com. Subject, Opportunity. My hands froze. Richard Roger Coleman. The same CEO who once stood on a stage calling me the future, and then quietly shoved me into a seat by the trash. The man who told me to leave if I didn't like being maintenance. Now he was reaching out. I opened the email. It was short. No apology. No excuses. Matt. I know things didn't end well. But I'm looking for a new start. If Cornova's expanding, I'd welcome a chance to discuss a potential advisory role. I believe I still have valuable industry insight. That last line made me laugh out loud. Valuable insight. I almost deleted it. Almost. But then I remembered every hour I'd spent silently absorbing the disrespect. Every meeting I'd been excluded from. Every time someone said I was outdated. And then I scheduled the interview. Yes. I brought him in. It was surreal. He walked into Cornova's sleek glass conference room in a charcoal suit that no longer fit him right. His swagger was gone. His eyes carried the weight of a man who had tasted power, and choked on it. He sat across from me, visibly uncomfortable. I kept the tone strictly professional. So, Roger, I began, folding my hands. Why leave Synercom now? He cleared his throat. After recent events, the board asked me to step down. They're bringing in external crisis management. I nodded. And why Cornova? Because, he said carefully, it's clear you're building something real here. Something stable. I recognize talent when I see it. I raised an eyebrow. You mean now you do? His face flushed. But he didn't argue. I slid his resume aside. Let me ask you this, do you think leadership is about vision, or respect? He paused. Both. But if I'm honest, I may have lost sight of the second. I stared at him for a long moment, then stood. Thank you for your time, Roger. We'll be in touch. He rose and extended a hand. I didn't take it. He left without a word. As the door closed behind him, something in me settled. I had no interest in humiliating him further. That wasn't the point. The twist wasn't that he came crawling back. The twist was I didn't need revenge anymore. Because I'd already won. Not through destruction, but through creation. Not by tearing him down, but by rising on my own terms. That night, our board officially promoted me to Chief Technology Officer. And my first directive? Talent is never disposable. We rise together, or not at all. I stood by the window of my new corner office, the skyline of Palo Alto shimmering in the evening light. The hum of conversation behind me faded as I watched the sunset cast long shadows over the city that once made me feel invisible. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I was seen. I was respected. And more importantly, I was free. Cinercom limped along after Roger's departure, but its soul was gone. Their biggest clients had jumped ship. Their stock plummeted. Darren vanished from the tech scene entirely. Some say he burned out. Others say he was scapegoated. I didn't dig. It wasn't my job to finish them off. I had a company to build, and people to uplift. Over the next few months, Cornova soared. Our AI platform revolutionized data processing across multiple sectors. My team, the same team once tossed aside, was now leading the charge, not behind closed doors, but on main stages, panels, and global conferences. I made sure every one of them had a voice. Lisa led our keynote in Toronto. Raoul published a paper in Wired. Jean was offered a visiting professorship at Stanford. Every success they had was a nail in the coffin of the belief that experience had an expiration date. And me? I didn't chase the spotlight. But it found me anyway. A reporter from Fast Tech Weekly asked me to describe what changed everything. I told her the truth. I stopped asking for permission to matter. The article was titled, "The Man They Called Maintenance, How One Engineer Rewired the Valley's Future." But the part that stuck with people wasn't the systems or the contracts. It was the culture. At Cornova, we had built something rare, a workplace where respect wasn't earned through politics, it was given through purpose. One afternoon, Sarah, an old colleague from Cinercom, joined us. She'd held out for a while, believing the company could recover. She was wrong. When she walked through the doors of Cornova, she cried. I didn't realize how heavy it had gotten until it lifted, she said. I knew that feeling. Because I had carried it too. Years later, when people asked how it felt to see Cinercom fall, I always gave the same answer. It's not about seeing them fail. It's about watching us rise. Roger? I never heard from him again. Word was he tried consulting, but no one wanted the man who'd lost $1 billion empire out of ego. I don't know where he is now. And I don't care. Because the real revenge? It wasn't the crash. It wasn't the job offers or the accolades. It was reclaiming my worth. And showing others they could do the same. I visit the old Cinercom building sometimes. It's quiet now. Smaller. Dimmer. But across town, Cornova buzzes with energy. And in the server room, just like I did all those years ago, I sometimes sit beside the hum of machines and think back to that night by the trash. The humiliation. The silence. The spark. And I whisper, not with bitterness, but with gratitude. Thank you, Roger. You didn't destroy me. You just reminded me to never let anyone else define my value again. In the end, truth has a way of surfacing, even if it comes twisted through pain and betrayal. As one wise voice once said, sometimes your greatest enemy was once your closest ally. If this story struck a chord with you, let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe, share, and spread the word, because justice deserves to be heard.